My name is, well, it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the truth about what happened to those 4 scientists in the remote Alaskan wilderness, a truth that the government has desperately tried to bury forever. In late November 2022, a specialized research team from various scientific backgrounds was assembled for what seemed like a routine environmental monitoring expedition in the most isolated regions of Alaska's North Slope. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned climatologist, Dr. Michael Chun, a quantum physicist, Dr. Jonathan Harris, a microbiologist, and Dr. Sarah Winters, a geological engineer, 4 brilliant minds who would never return from their mission. What they discovered during those frozen, dark days was something so significant, so potentially world-altering, that powerful forces decided their silence was the only solution. I know this because I was part of the peripheral support team, and I've spent months piecing together the fragments of their final research. Their expedition wasn't just another climate research mission. Something deeper was happening, something that connected unusual electromagnetic readings, unexplained biological mutations in Arctic microorganisms, and geological anomalies that defied current scientific understanding. The team's initial communications suggested they were onto something extraordinary, something that challenged everything we know about environmental systems and potential underground phenomena. Dr. Rodriguez's last encrypted transmission, which I managed to partially decrypt, mentioned structural irregularities beneath the permafrost that didn't align with any known geological models. Dr. Chen's quantum sensor data showed bizarre energy signatures that seemed to pulse with an almost intelligent rhythm. Dr. Harris's microbial samples revealed genetic adaptations that were, quite frankly, impossible according to current scientific paradigms. But here's the chilling part. 3 days after their last communication, all 4 scientists were officially reported as missing during a severe Arctic storm. The official report claimed they were victims of extreme weather conditions. But I know the truth is far more sinister. Satellite imagery, which I've carefully cross-referenced, shows unusual military activity in the exact coordinates of their last known location. Unmarked helicopters, specialized extraction teams, and a complete communications blackout. This wasn't a rescue operation. This was a deliberate elimination. Someone, or some organization, wanted to ensure that whatever these scientists discovered would never see the light of day. The implications are terrifying. What could be so dangerous in the Arctic wilderness that 4 top-tier researchers needed to be permanently silenced? I've spent months gathering evidence, talking to anonymous sources, connecting dots that powerful entities want to remain disconnected. My own life has been threatened multiple times, but I refuse to let their sacrifice be in vain. The world needs to know what happened in those endless white expanses, where darkness isn't just a natural occurrence, but a deliberate strategy of concealment. The scientific community has been suspiciously quiet. No formal investigations, no inquiries about the missing researchers. It's as if they've been systematically intimidated into silence. Professional journals that once would have demanded answers now publish only sanitized, government-approved narratives. My goal in sharing this is not just to expose a conspiracy, but to honor the courage of those 4 individuals who were willing to pursue knowledge at the cost of their own lives. Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Chun, Dr. Harris, and Dr. Winters, they were more than just researchers. They were seekers of truth in a world increasingly dominated by secrets and manipulation. To anyone watching this, be vigilant. The truth is out there, buried beneath layers of ice, bureaucracy, and calculated misinformation. And I intend to keep digging, no matter the personal cost. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a real account of a systematic cover-up that goes far beyond what most people could comprehend. You might be wondering how 4 seemingly different scientists ended up on this fateful expedition. Let me provide some context that goes beyond the official records. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasn't just a climatologist. She was a maverick who had been tracking unusual environmental patterns for years. Born in Chile to a family of geologists, she had a reputation for challenging conventional scientific narratives. Her previous research on extreme climate anomalies in the Andes had already put her on certain government watch lists. She spoke fluent Russian, Spanish, and English, which made her invaluable in international research collaborations. Dr. Michael Chun came from a different world entirely. A quantum physicist with roots in Silicon Valley's most advanced research circles, he had connections to both academic institutions and private tech companies. His work on quantum entanglement and nonlinear energy systems was considered groundbreaking and potentially dangerous. Rumors suggested he had been developing technologies that could map electromagnetic anomalies in ways traditional science couldn't comprehend. Dr. Jonathan Harris was a microbiologist with a dark past. His expertise in extremophile organisms, life forms that survive in the most inhospitable conditions, made him uniquely qualified for Arctic research. What most didn't know was that he had previously worked on classified government projects involving biological adaptation and genetic mutation. His colleagues whispered about experiments that pushed the boundaries of ethical research. And then there was Dr. Sarah Winters, a geological engineer with an unconventional background. She had spent years working in remote locations, from the Chilean desert to the Siberian tundra. Her specialization in ground-penetrating technologies and her ability to interpret complex geological data made her the perfect complement to the team. What bound these four together wasn't just professional respect. It was a shared conviction that something fundamental was changing in our planet's environmental systems. They had been quietly communicating for months before the expedition, sharing data points that didn't make sense through traditional scientific frameworks. The North Slope of Alaska wasn't just a random research location. It was a region with a history of unexplained phenomena. Indigenous communities had long spoken of strange lights, electromagnetic disturbances, and areas where traditional navigation tools simply stopped working. Western science had always dismissed these accounts, but these four researchers saw something more. Their funding was complex, a mixture of government grants, private research funds, and discrete contributions from technology companies interested in cutting-edge environmental research. This web of financial support meant they had both significant resources and significant pressure to produce results. What I discovered later was that each of them had been subtly tracked and monitored long before this expedition. Their communications were intercepted, their previous research scrutinized. The team wasn't just conducting research, they were being set up. The equipment they carried was far more advanced than standard scientific gear. Specialized quantum sensors, genetic sampling tools that could detect microscopic mutations, ground-penetrating radar systems that could map subterranean structures with unprecedented detail. These weren't just research tools, they were potential windows into something much larger. Their last known base camp was established 120 miles north of the Arctic Circle, in an area so remote that satellite communication was their only link to the outside world. The temperatures during that time of year could drop to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, making survival itself a constant challenge. Something happened during those days in the wilderness, something that prompted an immediate and ruthless response from entities that wanted their discoveries suppressed. The fragments of data I've managed to recover suggest they were close to understanding a phenomenon that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of environmental systems, geological stability, and potentially even the nature of our planet's internal structures. They weren't just researchers. They were about to become whistleblowers of a truth that some powerful forces would kill to keep hidden. The real conflict began on the night of December 7, 2022, a date that would become etched in my memory forever. Dr. Chen's quantum sensors started picking up anomalous readings that defied all scientific explanation. The electromagnetic signatures beneath the permafrost were pulsing with a frequency that suggested something was alive. Not just geological activity, but a form of energy transmission that seemed intelligent, deliberate. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to recognize the potential magnitude of their discovery. Her climate models showed that the anomalies weren't random, they were synchronized. Precise, almost like a network of underground communication systems that had been dormant for centuries, if not millennia. Dr. Harris's microbial samples revealed something even more disturbing. The extremophile organisms found in the ice cores were mutating at an unprecedented rate. Genetic structures that should have been stable were rapidly adapting, showing signs of what he called intentional reconfiguration, as if responding to some external stimulus. Dr. Winter's ground-penetrating radar uncovered massive geological inconsistencies. Massive underground structures that didn't align with any known geological formations. Perfectly geometric patterns buried thousands of feet beneath the Arctic ice, structures that suggested either advanced prehistoric engineering or something far more alien. Their satellite communications became increasingly fragmented. Encrypted messages were sent to multiple scientific institutions, backups of their data, insurance policies against potential suppression. They knew they were onto something that could rewrite everything we understand about planetary science, biological evolution, and possibly even our own origins. On the night of December 9th, everything changed. The first sign of external intervention came with a complete communications blackout. Their specialized research equipment began to malfunction simultaneously, a statistical impossibility under normal circumstances. Dr. Chun was the first to suggest they were being targeted by an advanced jamming technology. I have fragments of Dr. Rodriguez's final encrypted transmission. Her voice was different, a mixture of scientific excitement and pure terror. She spoke about systemic suppression mechanisms and how they've been waiting, watching, controlling the narrative for generations. Satellite imagery I've obtained shows unusual military-grade drone activity in their research zone. Unmarked helicopters with no identifying markers. Specialized extraction teams moving with precision that suggested years of preparation. The team realized they were no longer just researchers, they had become targets. Dr. Harris's last journal entry, which I managed to reconstruct, was chilling. He wrote about discovering genetic markers in the extremophile organisms that suggested deliberate genetic manipulation. Not evolution, but engineering. Something, or someone, had been experimenting with life forms in this remote Arctic environment for an unknown period. Dr. Winters began documenting the underground structures in detailed geological maps. The formations were too perfect to be natural. Precise angles, symmetrical designs that suggested intelligent design. She theorized these weren't just geological anomalies. They were potentially evidence of a civilization or technology far beyond our current understanding. Dr. Chen's quantum data suggested something even more radical. The energy signatures weren't just signals, they were a form of communication. A language encoded in quantum frequencies that our current scientific models couldn't even begin to comprehend. Their research was converging on a terrifying conclusion. Whatever was beneath the Arctic ice was not just a scientific discovery. It was a potential threat to the existing global power structures. Someone or some organization was determined to ensure this information never saw the light of day. The final hours of their expedition became a desperate attempt to preserve their discoveries. Data backups, encrypted messages, fragments of evidence scattered across secure servers. They knew the risks. They understood the potential consequences. And then silence. 4 of the world's most brilliant scientific minds vanished. Their research confiscated. Their families told convenient lies about Arctic accidents. But I know the truth, and I'm going to expose it. What most people don't realize is that this story goes deeper than just 4 missing scientists. Each of them carried personal histories that were interconnected in ways that would make this conspiracy even more complex. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasn't just a random climatologist. Her father, Carlos Rodriguez, had been a prominent geologist who mysteriously disappeared during a research expedition in Patagonia 30 years ago. His last research notes, which I've managed to obtain through underground channels, contain similar electromagnetic anomaly readings to what Elena discovered in Alaska. Dr. Michael Chen's background was equally complicated. His mother, a senior researcher at a classified Department of Energy facility, died under suspicious circumstances when Michael was just 16. The official report claimed a laboratory accident, but Chen had always suspected something more sinister. His quantum research was, in many ways, a continuation of his mother's unfinished work. Dr. Jonathan Harris had a brother who worked deep within the CDC's most restricted biological research facilities. 3 years before this expedition, his brother committed suicide, or so the official report stated. Harris never believed the story, and his extreme microbiological research was partly driven by a desire to understand the scientific conspiracies that might have led to his brother's death. Dr. Sarah Winters carried perhaps the most intriguing personal connection. Her maternal grandmother was a native Alaskan elder from the remote village of Utqiagvik. The elder had spoken for years about ancient underground structures and energy systems that the scientific community had always dismissed as indigenous mythology. These personal histories weren't coincidences. They were carefully constructed threads in a much larger tapestry. What I discovered through months of investigation was that these 4 scientists had been subtly tracked and potentially manipulated their entire careers. Their research paths, their academic connections, their funding sources, everything suggested a long-term strategy of controlled scientific exploration. An anonymous source within a government research facility revealed something shocking. There was a classified program dating back to the 1950s that had been monitoring specific genetic lineages and scientific bloodlines. Families with members who showed extraordinary capabilities in understanding complex environmental and quantum systems were being quietly observed, their children's careers subtly guided. The Rodriguez, Chun, Harris, and Winters families all had something in common: generational exposure to environments and research domains that suggested unusual genetic predispositions to understanding complex systemic interactions. Their Alaskan expedition wasn't just a random research mission. It was the culmination of decades of careful scientific grooming, a moment where multiple research threads were designed to converge. Financial records I've uncovered show that their research was funded through a labyrinth of shell corporations. Government grants, private technology companies, and anonymous donors created a funding ecosystem so complex that tracing the original sources became nearly impossible. More disturbingly, I found evidence suggesting that similar research teams had been strategically eliminated in the past. A geologist in Siberia, a quantum researcher in Chile, a microbiologist in Antarctica, always working on projects that suggested something larger was happening beneath our planet's surface. The timing of their Alaska expedition was also suspicious. Global climate change had been rapidly melting Arctic ice, potentially exposing geological structures that had been hidden for millennia. Were they sent to investigate, or to ensure certain discoveries remained hidden? Dr. Winters' native Alaskan connections provided another layer of complexity. Indigenous oral histories spoke of guardians beneath the ice, mythological narratives that Western science had always dismissed, but that contained surprising scientific accuracy when examined closely. These weren't just scientists. They were pieces in a global puzzle of scientific suppression, individuals who had been carefully prepared their entire lives to reach this specific moment of discovery. And someone was determined to ensure they would never reveal what they found. The turning point came on December 11th, a date that would forever mark the moment everything changed. Dr. Chen's quantum sensors detected an unprecedented energy signature that didn't just break scientific protocols, it shattered them completely. The electromagnetic pulse wasn't random, it was a deliberate transmission. Something beneath the Arctic ice was communicating. Dr. Rodriguez's climate models began showing impossible data. Temperature fluctuations that defied all known physical laws. Sections of permafrost were heating and cooling in patterns that suggested intelligent manipulation. Not natural climate change, but something far more calculated. Dr. Harris's microbial samples started exhibiting behavior that was nothing short of terrifying. The extremophile organisms weren't just adapting, they were reorganizing. Genetic structures were rearranging themselves with a precision that suggested guided evolution. It was as if these microorganisms were responding to a complex, external instruction set. Dr. Winters' ground-penetrating radar revealed the true magnitude of their discovery. Beneath the ice lay a network of structures that were too perfect to be natural. Geometric patterns, precise angles, interconnected systems that suggested an advanced engineering capability far beyond human technology. Then, everything accelerated. At exactly 2:37 a.m., all four scientists experienced simultaneous physiological changes. Their communication logs, which I've painstakingly reconstructed, show bizarre medical symptoms. Increased neural activity, altered brainwave patterns, temporary genetic mutations that lasted precisely 17 minutes. Dr. Chen's quantum communication equipment picked up a transmission, not in any known human language, but a complex series of frequency modulations that suggested a form of communication beyond our current understanding. The data burst lasted exactly 3.14 seconds, a number that felt deliberately chosen. Dr. Rodriguez's climate tracking systems showed a localized atmospheric disruption. A perfect hemispherical energy field, precisely 2.6 kilometers in diameter, emerged around their research site. No external energy source could be identified. It was as if the very environment was responding to their presence. Dr. Harris discovered something even more disturbing in his biological samples. The microorganisms were not just adapting, they were creating a form of collective intelligence. Genetic markers suggested a communication network that functioned more like a neural system than individual cellular structures. Dr. Winters' geological readings provided the most shocking revelation. The underground structures weren't just formations. They were a system, a network, something that had been waiting, dormant, possibly for thousands, if not millions of years. Their final group communication, encrypted and fragmented, revealed their collective realization. Whatever they had discovered was not just a scientific anomaly. It was a potential threat to everything we understood about human history, planetary evolution, and our place in the universe. Someone was listening. Someone, or something, knew they had discovered too much. The first external intervention came quickly. Satellite imagery I've obtained shows specialized extraction teams approaching their research site. Military-grade helicopters, unmarked vehicles, a level of response that suggested this was far more than a standard scientific research mission. Dr. Chen's last transmission was chilling. "They're not trying to stop us from talking," he said. "They're trying to prevent us from understanding." Dr. Rodriguez's final journal entry spoke about a discovery that would rewrite everything we know about planetary systems, human evolution, and the nature of intelligence itself. Dr. Harris's last biological samples showed something unprecedented. The microorganisms were creating a form of collective memory. Not just adaptation, but a systematic preservation of information that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond our current scientific comprehension. Dr. Winter's final geological mapping revealed structures that suggested an engineering capability that defied all known technological paradigms. Precision, complexity, a level of design that implied something far more significant than a random geological formation. They were on the verge of a discovery that would change everything, and someone was determined to ensure that discovery would never see the light of day. The aftermath was swift and calculated. Within hours of their final transmission, every trace of their existence began to disappear. Academic records were altered. Research grants were retroactively canceled. It was like these four brilliant scientists were being systematically erased from history. I managed to intercept communication logs that revealed the initial government response. High-level security clearance conversations that were never meant to be heard. They weren't discussing a rescue mission. They were planning a complete containment protocol. Dr. Rodriguez's research institution received an immediate directive from a classified government department. All of her research data, decades of work, was to be quarantined indefinitely. Her colleagues who attempted to ask questions were quietly reassigned or offered suspiciously generous early retirement packages. Dr. Chen's technology patents, which were revolutionary in quantum communication, were suddenly classified. His entire digital footprint was being systematically sanitized. Former colleagues reported strange visits from men in dark suits, asking detailed questions about his recent research and personal connections. Dr. Harris's biological samples, the most critical evidence of their Arctic discovery, were intercepted before they could be processed by any independent laboratory. Specialized containment units were deployed, suggesting these weren't just ordinary scientific specimens. Dr. Winter's geological mapping data triggered an immediate response from multiple government agencies. Satellite surveillance was intensified around the research area. A no-fly zone was established with unprecedented speed, blocking any potential independent investigation. But the most chilling reactions came from unexpected sources. Indigenous Alaskan communities, particularly elders from remote villages, began reporting strange phenomena. Electromagnetic disturbances, unusual wildlife behavior, dreamlike visions that seemed connected to the researchers' final days. An anonymous source within the native community shared a recording of an elder speaking about guardians beneath the ice, a legend that suddenly seemed less like mythology and more like a potential scientific reality. Scientific journals that had been eagerly awaiting the team's research suddenly went silent. Peer review processes were suspended. It was as if the entire scientific establishment had been instructed to look away. International research networks started showing signs of pressure. Funding for similar Arctic research projects was mysteriously redirected. Conferences were canceled. Scientists working on complementary research began receiving subtle warnings. The families of the four researchers were equally targeted. Dr. Rodriguez's elderly parents were offered a substantial compensation package with strict non-disclosure agreements. Dr. Chen's sister, who worked in a high-security government research facility, was suddenly transferred to a remote location. Communication intercepts revealed something even more disturbing. The government's response wasn't just about suppressing information. There was a genuine sense of fear. High-level security briefings suggested that whatever the team discovered represented a potential threat far beyond a simple scientific anomaly. Satellite and military tracking systems showed increased activity around the Arctic research site. Not just standard surveillance, but a level of response that suggested active containment of something potentially dangerous. Conspiracy theory forums and independent researchers began connecting dots. But every time someone got close to piecing together the full story, their online presence would mysteriously be compromised. Accounts deleted. Research files corrupted. They didn't just want to hide the discovery. They wanted to ensure no one would ever get close to understanding what those 4 scientists found in the frozen wilderness. What could be so dangerous that 4 of the world's most brilliant minds needed to be completely erased? But not everyone was willing to let the truth die. I wasn't just a passive observer. My connection to this story ran deeper than anyone could imagine. My sister was Dr. Elena Rodriguez's research assistant, and when she disappeared along with the team, I made a promise. A promise to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The first step was understanding that conventional methods would fail. Government channels were blocked. Academic institutions were compromised. I had to create my own network of truth seekers, scattered researchers, retired intelligence officers, indigenous knowledge keepers, and technology experts who sensed something fundamentally wrong with the official narrative. Dr. Rodriguez's niece, Maria, became a crucial ally. A brilliant computer forensics expert, she had inherited her aunt's tenacity. Together, we began reconstructing the fragmented data, using advanced decryption algorithms and quantum recovery techniques that pushed the boundaries of digital forensics. Dr. Chen's former graduate student, a quantum computing specialist named David Liu, provided breakthrough technology. He had been developing neural network algorithms capable of reconstructing complex data patterns from minimal fragments. The technology was so advanced that it could essentially predict missing data based on existing patterns. An unexpected source of support came from the native Alaskan community. Elder councils, who had long spoken about the guardians beneath the ice, began sharing generational knowledge that aligned mysteriously with the scientific data. Their oral histories, once dismissed as mythology, now seemed like carefully preserved scientific records. We discovered a pattern. The 4 scientists weren't just randomly selected. Their genetic lineages, their specific research backgrounds, their personal histories, everything suggested they were part of a larger, more complex design. Dr. Harris's brother's mysterious death, not a suicide, but a calculated elimination to keep him from connecting certain scientific dots. Dr. Winter's native Alaskan grandmother's stories about underground structures documented geological anomalies that matched her team's final research. Our network grew. Former military intelligence officers who had worked on classified Arctic research, whistleblowers from various government agencies, independent researchers who had been tracking similar anomalies across different global locations. Technology became our primary weapon. We developed custom data reconstruction algorithms, quantum decryption protocols, advanced machine learning systems designed to piece together the fragmented research data. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A series of encrypted data fragments, when processed through an advanced quantum algorithm, revealed something extraordinary. The Arctic research wasn't just about geological or biological discoveries. It was about understanding a form of intelligence that existed beyond our current scientific comprehension. Dr. Rodriguez's climate models, when reanalyzed using advanced predictive algorithms, showed patterns of environmental manipulation that suggested a sophisticated, potentially non-human intelligence system operating beneath the Arctic ice. Dr. Chen's quantum communication data, once considered random noise, revealed a complex communication network. Not just signals, but a form of information transmission that functioned more like a living, adaptive system. Dr. Harris's biological samples, when analyzed using advanced genetic reconstruction techniques, showed evolution happening at a rate and complexity that defied all known scientific models. The microorganisms weren't just adapting, they were creating a form of collective, networked intelligence. Dr. Winter's geological mapping, when processed through advanced 3D modeling and machine learning algorithms, revealed underground structures that suggested an engineering capability far beyond human technological understanding. We weren't just investigating a government cover-up, we were uncovering evidence of something far more profound. A potential form of planetary intelligence that had been waiting, observing, potentially guiding environmental systems for generations. The 4 scientists weren't eliminated because they discovered something dangerous. They were eliminated because they were about to reveal something that would fundamentally change our understanding of life, intelligence, and our place in the universe. The final pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place, and we knew the risks were astronomical. Our network had grown beyond a simple investigation. We had become a precision instrument designed to expose a truth that powerful forces wanted to remain hidden. Each member brought a unique skill set: Maria's forensic computing, David's quantum analysis, indigenous knowledge keepers, retired intelligence operatives, all connected by a singular mission. We discovered a pattern in the original research data that suggested the Arctic site was more than a random location. It was a strategic point of intersection: geological, electromagnetic, and biological systems converging in a way that defied traditional scientific understanding. Satellite imagery, cross-referenced with classified geological surveys, revealed something extraordinary. The area where the four scientists had disappeared contained multiple underground structures that didn't match any known geological formation. Perfectly geometric patterns, precise angles, systems that suggested intentional design. Dr. Rodriguez's climate models, when reprocessed using advanced predictive algorithms, showed something even more alarming. The Arctic region wasn't just experiencing climate change, it was undergoing a systematic transformation. Temperature fluctuations, atmospheric anomalies, electromagnetic disruptions, all following a pattern too precise to be natural. Dr. Chen's quantum communication fragments suggested an even more radical conclusion. The energy signatures weren't just signals. They were a form of communication, a language encoded in quantum frequencies that our current scientific models couldn't comprehend. We began receiving encrypted communications from unexpected sources, anonymous messages from research facilities around the world. Fragments of data that suggested similar anomalies had been observed in other remote locations: Antarctica, Siberia, deep ocean regions. A retired NSA analyst, who contacted us through a secure communication channel, confirmed our suspicions. There was a global network of research sites being systematically monitored and controlled. The four scientists weren't an isolated incident. They were part of a larger, more complex system of scientific suppression. Indigenous knowledge keepers from different parts of the world started sharing stories that aligned mysteriously with our scientific findings. Oral histories about guardians and watchers that had been passed down through generations suddenly seemed less like mythology and more like carefully preserved historical records. Our technological approach evolved. We developed custom neural network algorithms capable of reconstructing complex data patterns from minimal fragments. Machine learning systems that could predict missing information based on existing data points. The most critical breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Winter's geological mapping data, when processed through a custom 3D modeling system, revealed underground structures that suggested an engineering capability far beyond human technological understanding. We weren't just preparing for a revelation. We were constructing a comprehensive case that would challenge everything humanity understood about scientific discovery, planetary systems, and our place in the universe. Something was waiting beneath the ice. Something that had been observing, calculating, potentially guiding planetary systems for generations. And we were getting closer to understanding its true nature. The final preparation was about to begin, and we knew the risks were beyond anything we had previously imagined. December 12, 2022, the night everything came to a horrifying conclusion. The quantum readings from Dr. Chen's equipment went completely off the scale, pulsing with an intensity that caused all their electronic equipment to emit a high-pitched whine. The permafrost beneath their research station began to vibrate at a frequency that made their bones ache. Dr. Rodriguez's final transmission, which I've only recently managed to fully decrypt, reveals the terrifying truth. The structures they discovered weren't just underground formations, they were containment units. Ancient technological marvels designed to hold something that should never have been disturbed. Their research, their presence, their very measurements had weakened the barriers. The ice isn't just melting, her voice trembles in the recording. It's being deliberately dissolved. The microorganisms Dr. Harris discovered, they're not mutations. They're tools. Someone engineered them millions of years ago to maintain the containment field. And now, God help us, they're failing. The satellite imagery from that night shows something that still haunts my nightmares. The ground around their research station erupted in a perfect geometric pattern. The military teams that had been monitoring them suddenly rushed in, but not to attack. They were running from something. The thermal imaging shows their body temperatures dropping to impossible levels in seconds. Dr. Chen's last data burst contained quantum readings that defied physics. Space itself seemed to be folding around their location. His final notes, scribbled frantically on his tablet, mentioned dimensional barriers collapsing, and they're coming through the gaps in reality. The electromagnetic disturbances were so severe that they created visible auroras, but these lights moved with purpose, forming patterns that seemed to communicate in some ancient, forgotten language. Dr. Winter's final geological scan revealed that the geometric structures weren't built down into the ice. They were growing up from something far deeper. Her last transmission included 3D renderings of what lay beneath, a vast network of chambers and corridors, all perfectly preserved in the ice, all beginning to activate after millions of years of dormancy. The architecture wasn't random. It was organic, almost like a massive neural network, and it was beginning to pulse with energy. The truth, as I've pieced it together, is more terrifying than any conspiracy. The four scientists hadn't just discovered evidence of ancient technology or unknown natural phenomena. They'd found proof that our entire understanding of Earth's history was a carefully constructed lie. The Arctic wasn't just a frozen wasteland, it was a prison, a quarantine zone built by someone or something with technology far beyond our comprehension. The military wasn't there to silence the scientists. They were there to prevent what was inevitably coming. But they failed. We all failed. The containment protocols that had held for millions of years were broken not by force, but by simple human curiosity. Our instruments, our measurements, our very presence had created microscopic weaknesses in a system designed to last an eternity. The last images from the research station's cameras show Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Chin running toward something off-screen, their faces contorted in a mixture of horror and recognition. Dr. Harris's final notes, partially recovered from a corrupted hard drive, contain just one line. It's not coming up from below. It's coming back. What emerged from beneath the ice took their forms, their memories, their identities. The thermal cameras show 4 heat signatures leaving the scene, but the way they moved, the patterns of their movement, those weren't the same people who arrived at the research station. They were something else, wearing human shapes, carrying human memories, but serving a purpose far older than humanity itself. I've tracked their movements since that night. Each of them has taken positions in major research institutions, continuing their work with unlimited resources and government backing. But their research isn't focused on climate change or geological studies anymore. They're systematically examining other containment sites around the globe, using our own scientific infrastructure to map out similar prisons buried beneath the Earth's surface. The pattern they discovered is spreading. The same quantum signatures Dr. Chin detected are appearing in other Arctic regions. The containment structures are failing globally, each one corresponding to ancient legends of places where reality seems to thin, where people vanish without trace, where time itself behaves strangely. What we awakened that night isn't just escaping. It's orchestrating a systematic release of something that was imprisoned on Earth long before humans walked upright. And now, wearing the faces of 4 respected scientists, it's using our own institutions, our own curiosity, and our own technology to finish what it started millions of years ago. If you're watching this, I probably won't be around much longer. Yesterday, I saw Dr. Rodriguez at a climate conference in Geneva. Our eyes met, and what looked back at me wasn't human. They know I know. But here's the real horror. The changes they're implementing are already irreversible. The Arctic ice continues to melt, not from global warming, but from what's stirring beneath. More containment sites are failing. If you see any of these 4 scientists at your institution, run. And if you notice your colleagues starting to move differently, to speak differently, remember, they're not coming up from below, they're coming back. If this story has kept you awake, there's more where it came from. Hit subscribe to join our community of truth seekers and access more classified files about unexplained phenomena worldwide. Next up, discover what really happened at the Norwegian research facility, where 15 scientists vanished without a trace in 2019. Their story connects directly with what I've just shared. Click the link below, but be warned. Once you start uncovering these truths, there's no going back. Share this video if you believe the world needs to know. Remember, knowledge is power, but some knowledge comes with a price.